All right. Greetings and welcome back once again. This is Amuna, and you don't know already. I pray everybody is doing well. I said, let me go ahead and come back and follow up on this third installment reading from this book. I just want to make sure. Yep, that I can be heard. Reading from this book, Birth of a White Nation, The Invention of White People and Its Relevance Today. I think that subtitle is very important, and its relevance today. A lot of people be like, oh, Mona, that was 400 years ago. It's not that important, and its relevance today. The history, the things that happened before, our personal family lineage, our history, the collective memory, all of those things have relevance today. And some of this non-progressive circular movement is because we seem to think for some strange reason that it doesn't, right? So I'm gonna go ahead, and for those who are gonna join us, you don't know it, go already. Welcome to the conversation. Monisha, welcome to the conversation. You are bright and early, and I'm gonna go ahead and get started for those who are gonna pop on in. So I am on the, where am I here? The 17th page. And so just to follow up, Queenie, welcome. Where were we? So we found out some interesting stuff yesterday. Hopefully you went, clicked some of the links, read it on your own. I mean, is it only me? I know it's not only me. This stuff right here is everything. Lala, priest from the UK. Welcome to the conversation, right? So yesterday we read all about that Nicholas V. We read all about them going in and declaring people savages, and that's the reason that they can enslave them, melanated people perpetually, and they was over there granting themselves permission to do such things. So now we're up to Baker's Rebellion, because the reason we're reading this is because, 200 years would have passed from that mid 1400 to this point, and now Britain is like, give me some. At first, Britain was like, no, I will not enter the trade. That is lowly. I don't deal in those things. And the Portuguese, the Spanish was over there like, whatever, right? They was in there, North America. They was in South America. They was in the Caribbean. They were in there doing their thing. So finally, the British enters the trade now, right? And so now they feel like they need to play catch up. So they tried to come over here, set up a colony. First time it failed. The second time, it started looking like it's getting some motion, right? And of course, as we said before, as we read, they set up the colony for economic purposes. This was not this what people think it's a social experiment. I mean, that came later, but it was for money. It was to go out there, set up some satellite offices, and bring back some money to the crown. Okay, that's what they were looking for, the money. Okay, Bacon's Rebellion. So Bacon's Rebellion occurred at the time when the survival rate had significantly improved and the number of tenants and servants who completed their terms, not to mention survive, were growing. Because we remember that they were bringing in, it was 7-to-1 ratio. There was way more men than women, and they really didn't care. Even the early parts of slavery, they did not care. You died, they just went and got more people. They were not, it was only when the slaves trade started weaning off and they started passing laws to stop the trade from the continent, where they were like, oopsie, you know what I mean? Let's look at this breeding. You know what I mean? Anyway, let's see. While survival and completion of terms of indenture was positive outcomes for laborers, they posed problems for those who governed. These changes meant more competition for large landholders as freed tenants sought their own fortunes in tobacco, adding to the supply and depressing the price. What? We gotta let these people go, and then after a while, they're gonna be our competition? Again, about economy, greed, and desire, right? These free men, most of whom were bachelors, because there wasn't no women, I'm sorry, that was me, presented a growing threat to British authorities in Virginia. So, they were over there drinking their tea, eating the crumpets, and like, this is a problem, right? They responded to this threat by extending years of servitude and increasing the term of service required as a penalty for such violations as running away, giving birth to a child, or killing a hog. This is the definition of moving the goalposts. Like, oh, this is a problem. This is we're not here to be on no even playing field. So, they move the goalposts. What do you mean? You ran away? You got to stay in slavery more. You killed the hog? You had a baby? Oh, more time for you. In 1670, a law was enacted that stripped these men of their ability to vote so that only landowners and keepers of homes could vote in elections. So you take away economic power. So the things that we saw later on with civil rights is fighting for. These is the times where they were putting these laws in motion, right? So they're trying to make sure it wasn't no accident, make sure that you get no power. As the number of free tenants and servants grew in the 1640s and 1650s, fewer and fewer could expect to hold public office or to find workable land that was not already claimed. Indentured servants faced harsher conditions while freed ones faced narrowing opportunities for financial independence. Falling tobacco prices combined with taxation from the crown, because you owe me something. England is like, where think me send you go over there for? Eh? You better send back your money where you owe. And relative exclusion of most colonists from participating in the fur trade all worked to increase the resentment of the indentured and the free. Other conditions had changed as well, recalling that Virginia's economy was deeply invested in tobacco and that farming of tobacco required tremendous human effort. The desire for laborers failed to decline. So they go over there trying to scratching their wig, their powdery wig, trying to figure out how I'm gonna get more people so that we could continue to meet this demand. What I also noticed is that all of the crash crops, let me say the majority of the crash crops, the tobacco, the sugar, these things became the issue by which today's modern civilization is plagued. Meaning the excess consumption of tobacco and it's linked to cancer, and the excess consumption of sugars and it's linked to diabetes, it's linked to all type of uh, metabolic syndromes. It's just something interesting to observe that it didn't go away. You understand? That energy that was put there didn't go away. It has actually come back and plaguing the people. Oh, I'm sorry. I was doing my health homework earlier today, but let me continue here. Anywho, let's see here. Other conditions had changed as well, recalling that Virginia's economy was deeply invested in tobacco and the farming of tobacco required tremendous human effort. Okay, I read that already. Why she ever said that again? Recalling also that the vast majority of laborers who arrived in Virginia every year were Englishmen. Changes in this labor supply would have a noticeable impact upon the colony. By mid-century, the poor and homeless who were sent from England slowly, significantly leaving a gap in the labor supply. British landholders in Virginia had to look elsewhere. We know where that elsewhere is going to be. In the decades that followed, the numbers of laborers from Africa began to increase significantly. Why? Because they already gave themselves permission to enslave perpetually. They want to figure out how is it that we can get more laborers and not have to pay so that they can continue to enrich themselves off of someone else's effort. Mankind. The numbers of discontented Virginians were many. Servants of African and European descent faced harsher treatment, while those freed from servitude confronted conditions that rendered their freedom from servitude, much less their success, more and more tenuous. So it's like, why do you even have your freedom when you don't have the opportunity to play ball? right? You can't get access. It's like the small business. I was watching recently about venture capitalists, right? And there was a one particular minority woman who wanted to enter into this venture capitalist space, but less than 1% of venture capital funds are allocated for quote minorities and minorities of minorities. So essentially the same thing that was happening then is happening now. It's not that people may be smarter or more resourceful. It's that the hand out, the ability to get access to funds to run certain things are not as accessible as they are for other people. So when you pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, but you have none, right? And now you got to go weave some bootstraps so you could pull yourself up. Meantime, somebody's getting $1 million just to do R&D, research and development. Somebody's getting a 2 million, 5 million on the first round, right? So that they can see, quote unquote, if it works. So this particular woman was trying to break into this venture capitalist world, and she learned firsthand that it's not as easy as it looks. And if I'm not mistaken, in recent times, what was the name of it? They tried to shut down a micro venture capitalist fund because they said that their explicit, what was the name of them again? Their explicit attention is going to be put towards people of color. And they said that that was discriminatory. So essentially they said the quiet part out loud. What's the name of the fund again? Hold on a second. So if you look up this stuff, if you're interested in the business world like I am, I just come here and read, but this is something that I'm interested in and always, working on businesses myself. One of the issues is access to capital, right? And as we're reading, hold on, we see that this is not something new. This is by design. This is by design. I'm trying to see what was the name. If you guys are in the comment section and you know the name of it, listen, here it is. Here it is, so that we could see. What I'm talking about here, and to know that this is not new, right? This is something that has been, the playing field is not even. So I don't know if you've seen this. This was this year, if I'm not mistaken, right? So if you look at venture capitalists, meaning you have these angel investors, like when you see people go on Shark Tank and, are we going to give you blah, 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 and because we want people to break into this industry, blah, 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 all this other stuff like this, right? And they don't have access to do it right. So it's like, oh, why are you always, I'm trying to think here. Here it is. And then I'm going to get back to reading. Venture capital fund ends grant program supporting Black women after lawsuit. This was earlier this year. Atlanta-based venture capital fund on Wednesday agreed to stop operating a program that awarded grants to small businesses run by Black women to settle a lawsuit by an anti-affirmative action group that claimed it discriminated based on race. But the reality is these funds discriminate based on oh gosh, Fearless Fund, that was the name of it, agreed to settle the class act after a federal appeals court in June agreed with the nonprofit American Allegiance for Equal Rights, hear that name there, that the program likely violated a Civil War era law barring racial discrimination in contracting. The nonprofit was funded by Edward Bloom, who through a different group spearheaded the litigation that led the conservative majority U.S. Supreme Court last year to bar the consideration of race as a factor in college. And then we'll go on. So let me jump down here. The lawsuit against Fearless Fund was filed last August 2023 and targeted the Fearless Strivers Grant Contest, which awarded Black women who own small businesses $20,000 in grants and other resources to grow their business. And $20,000 when you're trying to grow a business is not big money. It's not big money. So there's like, yo, I don't want you to have, because what is the biggest growing, the fastest growing entrepreneurial group in America? Melanated women. And what is who has the least access to capital? Melanated women. Again, it says, according to the Fairless Fund, business owned by Black women in 2022 received less than 1% of the 288 billion that venture capital firms deploy. And there was another woman who's talking about this as well. Let's do the number right there. And this, what we're reading about, that's why they said how this is relevant to today. What we're reading about is no different than what happened 400 years ago in 1600. That even though they were free, and even though that they should have access to resources, these smaller landowners or these smaller business owners do not have access to resources. Let me do my 288 billion. Hold on real quick. So less than 2.8, call it $2.9 million, because 1% of 288 billion is 2.88 million. So less than $2.88 million is allocated for people, women of color. That's just curious, right? The fund, headed by CEO and founder partner Arian Simone, has said its goal was to address that disparity. Somebody was like, y'all ain't getting no money. Yo, they jumped out and sued. It's not funny. I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because it's wild, man. Fairless Fund counts JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, MasterCard's investors, and the fund was invested nearly 27 million in 40 startups led by women of color since 2019. Y'all can read this at your own discretion, but that's just to show that what they were experiencing, the climate of Baker's rebellion, is still the same climate. It's still the same climate, right? So let me go ahead and continue here. When you go out into certain spaces, right, the thought off the bat is, oh, you did this. I talk about it, in the business space. I don't talk about it much here, but trying to do business, attempting to do it in a space where people only expect you to be where they expect you to be, is real. I mean, it's like when Kanye learned that he wasn't like them, like, when he tried to do the fashion and he was expressing his frustration to Sway, and he was like having all of these solutions, and he's like, nah, you don't understand. You don't understand until you go into these spaces, right? And then it's like, what are you doing here? But anyway, for the time, let's continue. I just wanted to share that because, again, it was the same climate that we're reading about. Where are we? Where are we? Where are we? It says, British landowners in Virginia had to look elsewhere, and in the decades that followed, the number... Oh, I already read that. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. In 1676, these discontented people erupted in the colony of Virginia with laborers of European and African descent, bond and free, uniting in the fight against unpaid labor, the plantation elite, and those governing the colony in an effort to realize greater opportunity and independence. And by the way, when they started giving out land, they gave land allowances. A little bit after this time, they were giving them land grants, thousands and hundreds of acres, not thousands, hundreds of acres, to people to go down and incentivize them to go into Louisiana and to go into, not so far into Texas, but to go into Mississippi and to go into Georgia and to go into Alabama. They were giving them money and land. Anywho, where are we? Uniting in the fight against unpaid labor. Okay. Baker's rebellion was complicated and nuanced. Here, I will provide only a brief overview. There was a first phase that focused upon attacking native tribes. A second phase that was a direct challenge to the British who ruled the colony. The rebels expressed disdain for the way they ruled and grew their wealth. The rebellion is named after the man who led it, Nathaniel Bacon. He and a number of his neighbors held contempt for native tribal members who they blamed for the death of numerous servants. Okay, on that one, Mr. Bacon, didn't you come? Anyway, let me not get off. These neighbors were unimpressed by the response of the government to these incidents and were increasingly perturbed by the cost of the government that they supported through taxes. Bacon himself was a member of the governing council and tried without success to get a commission from Governor Berkeley to attack native tribes. And Bacon, you was wilding on that one because ain't you in a spot? Anyway, Bacon proceeded without it, and in May 10th, 1676, the governor denounced Bacon and removed him from the council. Bacon proceeded to lead a crusade against all native tribes, friendly and hostile, those with whom the Virginia colony had agreements and those with whom he did not. Like, bruh, homie said, oh boy, but this I can continue. Bacon was decreed a rebel by Governor Berkeley while Bacon issued a declaration of the people that sought to ruin all native tribes, including all trade with them. In addition, he began advocating for redistribution of some of the ill-gotten wealth in the colony. According to Morgan, in a society there where success had always depended on exploitation that fell short of plunder, it was an appealing formula to men on every class. So, I mean, it also applies to the people who you displaced. This is the thing. He was like, you have ill-gotten gain, but so do you, Bacon. I mean, anyway, within an environment of tremendous discontent among poorly treated laborers from Africa and Europe, and more constraint with fewer opportunities for the growing number of freed servants, it was not hard to rally supporters for Bacon's cause. While Bacon continued to attract native tribes, other rebel groups plundered the estates of government loyalists. So a full-on insurrection I go on now, A full-on pop-up I go on now, Yeah, so let's continue. So they're like, yo, full on dash with this, overthrow that. So where are we here? It says in late October, Bacon died. Soon thereafter, armed ships from England arrived and the rebellious tide died out, but not without having made an impact. Bacon's rebellion represents the unification of laborers of African and European descent, freed servants, and small landowners. The threat of a united labor force to the capitalist plantation system was clear. The response by the governing elite was a divide and conquer approach. They separated laborers by creating one group with the authority to rule over and oppress the other. So again, remember, they're a young, quote, not even nation, a colony, and they're beginning to change the laws and move the goalposts. And much like many of the rebellions that happened, once it happens, they go and have the little powwow, and then they decide that it's never going to happen again, and then they're going to put these laws and rules in place. Page 19. Historian Gary Nash, in describing the process of imposing slavery upon persons of African descent, provides a succinct review of the legal response that followed Bacon's rebellion. Here it is. In rapid succession, Afro-Americans lost their right to testify before a court, to engage in any kind of commercial activity, either as buyer or seller. And that was another thing, is that now this is when it goes into law. During slavery, the black man, the enslaved person, could not testify in court. How crazy is that? With the swipe of a pen. lost their right to testify before a court, to engage in any kind of commercial activity, either as a buyer or a seller, to hold property, to participate in the political process, to congregate in public places with more than two or three of their fellows, to travel without premises, and to engage in legal marriage or parenthood. The entire existence has now been criminalized. And to this day, if you see more than two or three gathered, you know, the Bible says where two or three gathered, there I am. No, if you see more than two or three gathered in a certain part in the world, it spells something is amiss. And that was written into law, which then shaped the culture. So when you look at what is supposed to be uh, the prescribed commercial endeavors, even to this day, this is why I just shared this article for those who just joined us. If you dare to come outside of that into other places, you got to jump through 152 hoops. Because what are you doing here? Right? We saw that was into law. According to Theodore W. Allen, the response to the rebellion was the creation of a new social status that would be a birthright of Anglos as well as Europeans in North America. A quote, white, end quote, identity designed to set them apart from African bond laborers as well as enlist Europeans across class lines as active or passive supporters of capitalist agriculture based on chattel bond labor. For those who have just joined us, welcome to the conversation. Bacon's rebellion provides the rationale to explain the need to divide laborers as means of a social control. A more detailed look at the response of colonial legislature to Bacon's rebellion reveals such an undertaking in law and will be examined in the next chapter. However, neither the rebellion nor the response to it explains why, quote unquote, white was procured as the means to do so. I mean, it's ease of use. I mean, it's ease of use. It's an easy identifying factor. Anywho, there is always more than one way to accomplish a task. Here, the division of laborers. That's what she says. For those who've just joined us, welcome. What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on that? Right? And this is one of the cultural, societal norms. At that point, it wasn't, and then it became a norm that has been passed down and continues to be passed down. If you're looking suspect right now on social media, they have the suspect challenge where the couples are, doing suspect is running and blah 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 blah. But that thing is real. The suspect is, who is the suspect and what is the suspect known to look like, sound like, and how does the suspect normally act? So let's continue just a little bit more. How are we at? 28 minutes. I'm on page 20 here. She asks the question, why white? In the aftermath of Bacon's rebellion, who remembers his name? What was Bacon's first name? Anybody remember Bacon's first name? In the aftermath of Bacon's rebellion, Virginia's landowning elite pushed for legislation that set British and other whites apart from those of native tribes, mulattoes, and those of African descent. Remember, because the whole reason they were doing this is because they wanted to make sure that they had the handle to control the power. And they didn't, so they came for the anti-miscegenation laws, and now they're coming on the front of the labor laws. These laws emerged in Virginia from 1691 through the first quarter of the 18th century. The inclusion of anti-miscegenation law among the list of benefits and privileges afforded to whites by law suggests that the law was less of a control mechanism to restrict whites than a benefit to advance interests. This claim would be advanced in the next chapter. It was not within an enactment from the Virginia colony where Bacon's rebellion raged that white reference in a group of humanity first appeared, but rather in an enactment from the colony of Maryland, recalling that Maryland's anti-miscegenation law of 1664 had the effect of encouraging the very marriages the law explicitly claimed to prevent. Because we read that yesterday, right? It was like punish you by law, and then they were still doing it anyway. Maryland legislature sought to address the conflict in 1681. The law included financial disincentives to masters who encouraged or assist such marriages. Because remember, we read yesterday that the master was like, "What? The picnic get to be mine and little Missy Ann? You know what? Go ahead and do it." Right? It says here. So they wanted to put a fine. Such marriages and impose fines upon the priest, minister, or magistrate who performed the marriage. The law states. So we're gonna read a little bit. As for as much diverse freedom, English or white woman, sometimes by the instigaton, procurement, or convenience of their masters, mistress, or dames, do intermarry with Negroes and slaves. The switch from the use of English or freeborn as the critical category referenced in 1664 legislation requiring protection that of white women can be seen in this law. So essentially, she's just running us up to say, listen, they started to weave it in earlier, at least 20 years earlier, in the language of the English or freeborn, and then they started to play fancy with it so that it became synonymous. Freeborn or English became synonymous with white, right? Oh, so very interesting. These words, I tell you. Virginia enacted an anti-miscegenation law in 1691 and applied its marriage prohibition to men and women within identified groups. It punished a quote-unquote white woman or man who married a person who was of African descent or a member of a native tribe by banishing them from the colony. Yo, let me drink liquor water, y'all. Yo, they was walling. Mm-mm. They they said banish them. Here go the law. Whatsoever English or other white man or woman being free shall intermarry with a Negro, mulatto, or an Indian man or woman bond or free shall within 3 months after such marriage be banished and removed from this dominion forever. Let me go ahead and look this joint up. Yo, they said, bruh, you got 3 months, okay, to get out of town forever. Say goodbye to your granny. Say goodbye to your dog. It's over. All right. They want you out of here. Just so curious. People be like, it's been so long ago. Uh-huh. Let's see here. Let's see. Do-do-do-do. Hold on 1 second. I'm just trying to see. Banish them. Okay. Let's read. Here it is. Let me. All right, here we go. I'm trying to see which one is coming first, though. This is Act 17. No, this is for liquor. This one is for liquor. What is this here? April 1691, William and Mary white man, see what she's talking about. So you'd be like, oh, this woman is wilding. You could go and look, and it's all scanned in. You can take a look for yourself. White man or woman, bond or free, intermarrying with a Negro, mulatto, or Indian to be banished forever. That's in the margin on page 87. White women having a bastard by a Negro or mulatto to pay, what's this? 15 sterling in default of payment to be sold for 5 years. Yo, they were wildin', son. Wait, hold on, go back. Such bastard to be bound by church wardens till 30 years of age. Servant women offending to be likewise sold after the expiration of their term of service. No Negro or mulatto to be set free unless the person freeing them pay for their transportation out of the country within 6 months. Are y'all seeing this? The statutes at large being a collection of all laws of Virginia from the first session of legislature in the year 1619. Let me read a little bit. What we saying right here? It says, reenacted by authority aforesaid, and it is hereby enacted that for the time to come, whatsoever English or other, quote, here it is, white man or woman being free shall intermarry with a Negro, mulatto, or Indian man or woman bound or free shall within 3 months after such marriage be banished and removed from this dominion forever. That's a move from ya. And that the justice of each respective county within the dominion make it their particular care that this act be put in effectual execution, and be it further enacted by the authority aforesaid, and it hereby enacted that if any Englishwoman being free shall have a bastard child by any Negro or mulatto, she pay the sum of 15 pounds sterling within 1 month after such bastard child shall be born, to the church wardens of the parish where she shall be delivered of such child. And in default of such payment, she shall be taken into possession of the said church wardens and disposed of for 5 years. They did not come to play. And the said fine of 15 pounds, or whatever the woman shall be disposed of for, shall be paid 1/3 part to their magistrates for and towards the support of the government and the contingent charges thereof, and 1/3 part to the use of the parish where the offense is committed, and the other third part to the informer. You know, so somebody I tell Panar. Yo, why did they let me wait? Let me pause for a second. How much is 15? Y'all gotta help me out in the comment section. How much is 15 pounds sterling? Because this to me sounds like a grip. Okay. This is 19, what is this? 1600s. Let me see if somebody out there wanna convert. 15 pounds sterling. I might have to look at that, because that don't sound like no little bit of money that she's about, like, and they're like, yeah, we know, because what is the likelihood? I found a site that's going to do it for me. What is the likelihood that she would have that money if normally it was the man who had the resources, and if they blocked the black man, the African descendant, the Indian man from having access to these resources? So what is the likelihood that they will have the money to pay? So they set something up so that the reality is, let me see, purchasing power. This is worth approximately, let me show you guys. This is just so that we could get some context here. This is worth, according to them, approximately, this is 15, enter currency. So when was this? 16, what did that just tell me? 1619? 1691, right? So 1690, 15 pounds sterling, right? It is equivalent to 1,797 pound in 2017. What could it buy in 1690? Two horse, three cow, 25 wool stones of wool, 7 quarters of wheat, 166 days of skilled tradesmen wages. Hey, hey. Almost half a year. Sis, y'all should have been saving up. Y'all should have been saving up. They want that 5 years off you, or just to really convince you not to do it. They're going to really convince you not to do it. How crazy is that? That is crazy. Okay, let's see here. So where we at? They charging her 166 days worth of skilled labor, and that's skilled labor. So if Holmesy didn't really have a job, hey, and she ain't had no money, hey. It says that if any English woman being free shall have a bastard child by any Negro or mulatto, she paid the sum of 15 pounds sterling within 1 month. Hey, hey. After such bastard child shall be born to the church warden. Okay, they split it up a third. The church is like, give them the money. It says, or whatever the woman shall be disposed of for shall be paid 1/3 part. I already read that. Where are we here? What happened? Old English don't have no periods? Let me see here. It says here, 1/3 part to the use of the parish where the offense is committed, and the other third to the informer. The informer, so that is not in the play. And they keep to the informer. And that such bastard child be bound out as a servant by the said church wardens until he or she shall attain the age of 30 years. And in case such Englishwoman that shall have such bastard child be a servant, she shall be sold by the said church wardens. So they're using the church to do their dirty work. After her time is expired, that she ought to, by law, to serve her master for 5 years, and the money shall be sold for dividend as is before appointed, and the child is to serve as aforesaid. As for as much as great inconveniences may happen to this country, y'all know, 1691. You hear what am I saying? As for as much as great inconveniences may happen to this country by setting of Negroes and mulattoes free, great inconvenience, by their either entertaining Negro slaves from their master's service, or receiving stolen goods, or being grown old, bringing a charge upon the country for prevention thereof, be it enacted by the authority aforesaid, and is hereby enacted, that no Negro or mulatto to wish I me there be after the end of this present session of assembly set free by any person or persons whatsoever, unless such person or persons, their heirs, executors, or administrators, pay for the transportation of such Negro or is that the page? Nah, the page jumped. Well, there you go. This is something else. But that was the page for what we were talking about and what she was referring to. Welcome to those who just, Gail says, Amuna, please share yourself more on social media. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I share as I can, Gail. I share as I can. It is authentic, and the hope is that we learn this history because it's important. As it says, it has relevance today. So thank you for coming through. Continue to press like. That's how it can share out to more people. Share it, like, share it, subscribe. Support the channel and thing, and that's how I can have more time to do this more often. Where are we? Okay. Where are we? This is a lot. Okay, so we went through Bacon's rebellion, and we saw how they got to this point, and after every time they see something happening, then they decide to make more laws to move the goalposts and to make sure the playing field is uneven at all times. And this is from the very beginning. Okay, this is from the very beginning, right? Now it had to change a little bit in present time, but some of the same behaviors are still present. Wish I would I know. Okay, I'm gonna read this last little part, and then I'm gonna what we did 5 to 5 minutes. I'm gonna wind up for today. According to Theodore W. Allen, for those who just joined us, "Birth of a White Nation: The Invention of White People and Its Relevance Today." The book is available on Amazon by the author, lawyer Jacqueline Battalora, so you can check it out at your own discretion. All right. It says here, according to Theodore W. Allen, the response to the rebellion was the creation of a new social status that would be a birthright of Anglos. Did I read this already? I did read that already. Okay, let me jump down. I read that already. Okay, the 1681 Anti-Miscegenation Law of Maryland utilizes an entirely new label to reference a group of people. This label was unlike those used in the past, which referenced nationality, religious affiliation, or legal status relative to enslavement or freedom. What explains the emergence of this new label and what is its significance? While Bacon's rebellion explains the desire to divide laborers, why was white the selected mechanism to do so? Historians who have addressed the emergence of race in colonial North America fail to subject the category deployed to question. She talked like a lawyer for real. she if you notice the way she's presenting this book, it's like she's presenting a case, and then she's accusing people. It's funny. But anyway, there are always multiple ways of accomplishing a task. Maryland's anti-miscegenation laws of 1664 and 1681, and Virginia's fornication law, which we read yesterday, of 1662, and anti-miscegenation law of 1691 reflect shifts in labels given to those who would become quote unquote white. So it was a work in progress, basically. They were in the middle of, making it the best that they could make it. So essentially, she goes a little bit more into why this eventually becomes the course that they choose, because of its, again, ease of use. It's the easy identifiers, right? And if you change, Leah, what's going on? Welcome to the conversation. If you change the whole class of one people, it makes it easy to prosecute. All manner of things in that vein, right? Let me go ahead and jump down here. It also comes with privileges, it comes with access, and it also comes with taking away privilege and access and agency from one group and wholly conferring it onto another group. '23. It is critical to understand to an understanding of the invention of the human category, quote unquote, white, to recall that while early colonists saw people who looked dramatically different from them, these differences had little meaning in society until the decades following Bacon's rebellion. Post-rebellion, the quote unquote Negro was assigned new meaning as debased and servile. I think it's not Marcus Garvey, not Marcus. Malcolm X, who infamously made the speech that "Who told you everything that's black is bad?" If you've ever heard of that speech, they did. They wrote it into law. Malcolm asked that, "Who told you your hair wasn't?" You know what I mean? That they wrote it into law. They wrote it into law. It doesn't mean it's true. It just means that's what they did, right? It says these differences had little meaning in society until the decades following Bacon's rebellion. Post-rebellion, the Negro, quote unquote, was assigned new meaning as debased and servile and was positioned below and in opposition to British and Europeans in order to accommodate the need of the planter class or the plantocracy. The plantocracy. The group of British and European laborers and freemen that would stand in opposition to the African slave needed to be sufficiently aligned with the ruling British of the colonies, aka the overseers, the middleman, middle management. They needed middle management to be on their side as opposed to siding with the people who they were governing over, right? Because there was a minority at the top. So they need middle management to be on their team. It is within this context, and under these constraints, desires, and demands that quote unquote white became the next label to capture the community of privilege. Those sufficiently like the British within the Virginia and Maryland colonies and all others to follow, quote, white rendered inclusion within the privileged group to an element of phenotype. In other words, a physical feature that is not readily changed. So again, it was easy because it's like, what are we going to use? Oh boy, let me think about this. Can you pass me a spot of tea? They was over there in their powdered wigs and they had outfits and they high heel boot with the Shakespearean tights on, right? And they culottes, trying to figure out what were we going to use. I said, I've got it, by golly, right? Where we at here? So they use phenotype. As such, from the onset, it could exclude the vast majority of those already clearly established by lawmakers, if not others as insufficiently British-like. Also, unlike Christian and freeborn white, had no previously established firm guidelines and accepted parameters. It says, this gave the new category incredible flexibility and is likely a feature of its incredible survival and success. So she's like, it works so well that them never really have to change it much. Like it even today, it's still a work. Who was white was by no means clearly established in 1681 and remains undefined as a matter of law to this day. So it's more, if you even look on the application, then you will see black, you'll see white, click, but then you'll see black, this, that, this. Like, what in the world? What is this, bro? Jeopardy? Anywho, let me see if I have anything else that I want to read. This was in chapter 1. So I'm just going to round out this chapter 1. I'm not going to read the entire book. I kind of just wanted to touch on that, even though it's not a long book. But I just wanted to touch on that it was through the anti-miscegenation laws. It was through the fact that they did not want the European woman to be marrying the African man, and that they levied taxes and punishments and banishment from the colony from marrying in this way. And this is also one of the things that we see in modern times, that the black man wants to kind of, he was there one time, not all, but many were there at one time where it was open and free. And so oftentimes, even as somebody achieves status and wealth, you may see them, change out the model of the melanated woman, not all the time, but we do see it, and then go and get the woman who was off limits to him as like the piece de la resistance. Maybe there's some type of epigenetic programming. I don't know. It's something to take a look at. Trying to see if I see anything. She is summarizing that Maryland imposed a marriage law restricting English women and enslaved men, but not English men and enslaved women. And we know that bred a lot of mixed children as well. And she just repeats some things here. Yeah, and that's pretty much that right there. That's that right there. That was chapter 1. I hope you guys enjoyed that. We went down and did some history. I enjoyed it as always. I'm going to put the link in the box for a little bit, see if anybody wants to come in and share their thoughts on that. So I'm going to put the link in the box right here. There's so much going on today. As we see, there's all kind of things coming up in the cycle. There's There is so much. So, you can share some of your thoughts on what's happening as it relates to what we're reading. Copy stream link. Onisha says she enjoyed it. I enjoyed it as well. It's always enjoyable to learn and grow. Indeed, the laws, it's important because what happened, what I found in just studying, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, is that even in the conversation of reparations, there are two different perspectives, or many perspectives, but the main perspective is that one people group, melanated people here, quote unquote black people, often approach the conversation from one perspective, and the ruling class approaches it from a very different perspective, right? As we are reading their paperwork, as we're reading their laws, right? This was their play. This was their screen play. This was what they set up. And then black people, quote unquote, Indians, Native Americans, actors in this case. But they were the directors. They were the ones who set it up. This is what that when they went and got melanated bodies, it was because, hey, I have a role that I want to fill. It was purely economic. Now, did other things come into play? Absolutely. LF, what's going on? Other things came into play. Yeah. But part of the conversation that even I have a book here that an elder wrote. I remember I met him when he came to have the conversation. Should America pay? Slavery and the Raging Debate of Reparations by Raymond Winbush. Right? And there's all this conversation around what was done and should you pay and do you who owes and and I think all of it is very valid. Even the commission to study slavery to determine, I think they just spinning their wheels, based on history, whether or not they're really going to pay. But I say that to say this topic needs to be studied in this way so that even the people can have an understanding of beyond the money part, right? What actually happened and how much it's still happening. How much is still happening. For those who just joined us, welcome to the conversation. Yeah, definitely. I just went over, we finished chapter 1 in the book. We continue to read. We went over a few more laws. And we just really looked at how they love to move the goalposts, especially in there. Like, what? Y'all getting free? Oh, heck, now we're going to have to extend it. Even the criminalization of marijuana in the early 1900s, you'll see similar things was done. Like, oh, we don't want black men to get at white women. So they went on this whole campaign talking about why marijuana was making black men violate white women. And so they criminalized it. As we saw, there was another book and if I think it's a documentary that was on, what was it called? 13. What is it called again? Y'all know what I'm talking about. It came out a couple of years ago that talks about from slavery to the prison industrial complex. What was the name of that documentary? That goes just like they did here. They criminalized certain things that mostly apply to black people, quote unquote, right? And so they criminalized it. But when it applied to white people, then that particular judgment is not applied in the same way. And we see something like that today. I've been in one of the class I had to study about drug use, and there's a lot of conversation around not only meth, what is the next thing, fentanyl, and all of these things. And the reality is, in the 80s and 90s, when there was a war on drugs and crack cocaine was taking over urban spaces, there wasn't any compassion for the junkie, quote unquote, for the person addicted to drugs. There wasn't any compassion. It was criminalization. It was criminalization. But now And it's not only been brought up by myself. This is something that you can see now when it's affecting a different demographic. Because I grew up when Ronald Reagan was hollering war on drugs, right? But now that these particular drugs are affecting another demographic, the narrative has shifted to we need to be more understanding. We need to decriminalize drug use. You need to be able to give out needle programs so that people will use new. I'm like, huh? Like, as someone who lived through the 90s and really saw the programming and saw what was pushed and saw how many melanated men went to jail behind the same stuff that you're saying today should be decriminalized and people need warm embraced. It's like, wait a minute now. Hold up now. Okay. Sakari said, true, insightful. Many are not aware of the law. It's still used, but basically it's a social bylaw today. It was challenged. Correct. But these are sometimes you see some things overturned, but then you also have the essence of it still present, right? The spirit of it still present. It's a lot. It's not to point the finger. Some people be like, "Oh, this is not listen, without this study, without this understanding, people will continue to just spin their wheels. We see it happen in all spaces. In gynecology, I don't mean to jump, right? But the same mentality that the medical industry in its inception had towards quote unquote black bodies and the father of quote unquote modern gynecology and the experiments that he did on melanated women's bodies, that same mentality of, you don't feel pain and I'm not listening to you because blah blah blah, it still happens today. If you look at the statistics of women who are injured or women who experience uh, extreme medical misfortunes, that's the wrong word, but as a result of not being heard, especially in childbirth, disproportionately it's women of color. So when we say, it's gone, this stuff doesn't happen, it still happens. It still happens. It still happens. Because the spirit of it is still here. Yep. Leah says, I know marijuana prohibition was a result to stop white women from laying down with. Yeah. Like all of this stuff is right here. And now today, because I don't know if they're running out of TV, they be making programs and be like, here, watch it. And everybody's over here watching madness, right? But they put it in programs now. They put it right in front of your face. Like, look what we did. I think there's a documentary called drugs that illegal drugs. What's the name of the documentary? It was a documentary that went over. Hold on. It was a documentary that was the history of illegal drugs, I think was the name of the documentary in America. I think that was the name of the documentary, right? And then, hold on. And then they show it to you. Like, yes, Sears and Roebuck used to sell heroin. Like the doctors used to prescribe. They used to be like, oh, you have a headache? Here, take some coke. Like, I know that it was an infant nation, but merciful Father, it was an illegal history of illegal. I think that's the name of it. Right? They used to sell the syringe. Like these people used to go into their they used to go into their here, look, here go one of them right here. So they'd be like, I'm gonna you stay wilding. No, not so much. Look at this. What's this? Heron. What did I just say they were selling? They were selling heron in a bottle and sending it to people. You could order this on the Sears and Roebuck catalog, complete with the syringe. But that wasn't the surprise in history. This was, they're talking about the opioid crisis when they brought over the Chinese to do in San Francisco to do the railroads, and how a lot of them got hooked on opium. So, it's very interesting to say the least. It's very interesting to say the least. Yeah, the crack era. But today, with the methamphetamine crisis, it's like, no, we need support. I'm not saying we don't need support. I'm trying to figure out how it is that you need support now, but they didn't need support before. The same reason why we just read that it was criminalization for, they're going to criminalize basically being melanated. Let me come see these comments. I put the link in the box. Yeah, that's the question. That's the question we all want to know. Yeah, Leah. Yeah, there's the whole project on healthcare disparities in medicine across the board. They call it social determinants of health, right? Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. So with that said, let me see. I have a mild to moderate form of sickle cell beta that I often face healthcare disparities from brown and black women. Wow. I'm sorry to hear that, but this is what is happening. And so when I talk about in other spaces, yeah, heroin in a bottle, heroin in a bottle. Coke was in the bottle. Coke was actually in Coca-Cola. They used to sell it in the medical, they used to sell it at the pharmacies where they had the soda fountains. Because first time the pharmacies in the early 1900s had soda fountains, and they used to get the syrup and then they would add the carbonated water. And so the original formula had Coke in it. And some of the doctors used to prescribe it for everything. Like, oh, you got a headache, this, that, and that. And then they started prescribing it for children. Let me not give, what's the name of the thing again? They used to, Coca, for children. And then they realized that children started getting addicted to drugs. Hold on. See? We ain't got no reason. You're gonna find out all kind of stuff when you log on to this channel. So make sure you like, subscribe, and share. Because Amuna just has wild, crazy facts just flowing around in my head. But where is this now? Coca-Cola was developed in 1886 by a pharmacist, John Shith Pemberton. And by the way, when homie died, there's a show called The Foods That Built America. The story, the grimy story of how the guy got his formula. I think he bought it off of his grieving widow. Homie showed up, not Pemberton, the guy who bought the formula, showed up at the people them funeral, which she and our son are grieve, bought it off of her for the low, and then went and then blew it up. That's a crazy story. But anyway, at the time it was introduced, the product contained cocaine from the cocoa leaves and caffeine from the cola nuts, which together acted as a stimulant. See that? See that? See that? So for a long time, America has been hooked on drugs. I don't know. I don't know. Okay. Look at, there was here we go. I ain't even gonna go off you guys could take a look at it, the history of it if you're interested. So I don't even remember what I was saying. Uh, no, what was happening, because the pharmacist is the one that prescribed it. So early on, just like today, a lot of these controlled substances, the they didn't realize how dangerous they were until later. And so a lot of people were addicted to these substances because they was just handing it out, oh, willy-nilly. You know what I mean? And it wasn't until later, it wasn't until the late 60s that they realized, or that they realized the mother shouldn't be drinking when she was pregnant, and that it would cause alcohol fetal syndrome. Okay. um and that they were two out of the country, I forgot where they came from, that was like, no, there is a connection between what's going on with the children being born and drinking. That's another story for another day. That if you look up that's crazy. So women was going around taking swigs. Oh boy, I can't make this stuff up. Listen up, I go wind on, yeah. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Yes, 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 yes. That exactly. And it's still to today. Exactly, LF. The public perception, but who is forming this perception, right? Again, if you look at what's happening, especially across middle America, um, today, this crisis of methamphetamines and this crisis of people being addicted to fentanyl and, all of these things. Now it's like, oh no, don't criminalize it. Oh no, don't send them to jail. Oh no, don't do this, don't do that. Let's pass legislation. Rewind 20, 30 years ago, it was like, oh, they're terrible, they're lowly, because they look different. It was a different demographic of people, the demographic who it was okay to say send them to jail. Even if you remember a Whitney Houston, I think she was. It wasn't Barbara Walters. What was the name of that next lady that used to interview? She interviewed her, and she was asking her this one. Everybody, when Whitney was still on that stuff, and she was like, "So, what are you using? What is it, like crack?" And Whitney was like, "Crack? Oh no, I don't do crack. Let's get this right. Crack is cheap." Right? So it's the perception that some people who are working in certain spaces can do coke and it be okay, but if you do crack, then because it's a low level drug, then that means you're low. It's crazy. Like, public perception is wild. Is wild. Is wild. Is wild. No, not Nancy Grace. What's your name? What the next lady name, man? She interviewed Whitney. Those were the old. It's not Barbara Walters. It's, what's her name again? They don't even make these type of interviewers no more. When they used to go in, they never. Here she is. Um, Diane Sawyer. Diane Sawyer. Here it is. Here we go.
Thin. Yeah, I'm 5'7" and thin. I can understand what you mean.
But that's not just thin.
Wait, hold on.
I can believe what you feel. I can believe that.
This is real. I mean, the bones. That's real.
Yeah, my bones. Yeah, I'm 5'7" and thin. I can understand what you mean.
But that's not just thin.
No, what is it? Diane, tell me.
Yo, Whitney, Whitney was wilding in this interview. Yo, she mad faced. She was like, "Oh, you still coming for me?" Although, you know what I mean, she was struggling. You know what I mean, she was struggling, and still had a spotlight on her. But listen to what she says.
You know,
It's scary thin.
I can believe what you feel. I can believe that. But do you really know? Do you really know?
No, you know.
Thank you.
Wait, she's not done yet. She's not done yet. Hold on.
Anorexia.
No way.
They've written it.
No way.
Bulimia.
No way.
That it's because of drugs.
No.
Why? It's not funny, but why Diane looked like, yo, you wildin', sis. She was like, okay, well, which one is it?
Now, I grant you, I partied. But there have been times when I know I was going through a lot of emotional stress and my eating habits were awful.
Whitney dying, crack rehab fails.
First of all, let's get one thing straight.
Look, you see, she's having a whole conversation. She's not even able to answer her. But the minute she mentioned crack, which has a stigma associated with what? A lower class, associated with, like, even drugs has, class systems. Like, oh no, let's get one thing straight. Let's hear what she says, and then I'm going to wind down. This is Diane Sawyer. That was her name.
Crack is cheap.
Crack is cheap. So she was like, you coming for me, I want to redeem myself at least on this point. Okay? Crack is cheap. All right, Diane?
I make too much money to ever smoke crack. Let's get that straight, okay? We don't do.
She says she makes, this is so curious. She makes too much money to ever smoke crack. Right? And she's like, this is a point that I can drill home on, right? I'm going to get this straight about the drugs. So she's kind of admitting that, yes, she's doing drugs because she triggered her by saying, you doing crack, Whitney?
Crack. We don't do that. Crack is whack.
Crack is whack is a 90s thing, but definitely. So that's kind of what I wanted to share. May Whitney rest in peace, because a lot of stuff, she went through a lot of stuff in her life as well. But that's just to show a lot. It's a lot. But with that said, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in. If you missed the beginning, go ahead and check it out. Let me go ahead and run this commercial real quick. If you would like to support the channel, like, subscribe at bare minimum. You get me? All right. We already know what to do to support the channel. Like, subscribe, and share. That is free. But if you want to support the work beyond all of the information, all of the knowledge, the deep research that I drop, my passion is giving back to the community, educating on all fronts. And I have this campaign up. If you would like to support, scan the GoFundMe so that I can bring these health education classes to children in the state. Also, if you just want to go ahead and be like, I just want to Cash App you, go ahead and Cash App the Yummy Cottage, And again, PayPal, for those like, I don't have PayPal, or I don't have Cash App. Listen, you can Cash App it, PayPal, or you can just go over to theyummycottage.com, and we have a donate button there as well. In addition to that, you already know, published author, go onto Amazon and purchase a book. Purchase Island Twist. Purchase Angry Black Woman Syndrome Revisited. You can purchase a book, gift it to a loved one, and those are all of the ways that you can support the channel. Thank you for tuning in. Now, let's get back to the story. All right, everybody, I'm going to go ahead and wind down. I'm thinking of whether or not I should come. Poor little Tyree's mother. We take a pause. I'm gone for 4 weeks, but we're going to determine whether or not we're going to rally back and finish up that particular storyline. I'll see. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and say, everybody have a blessed night until we can vibe again. You don't know? All right, one.